Access granted.
Well, everybody, thank you for coming out. So, it's Scott Parker. I'm a native to San Antonio, information security professional. I've been doing information security, information assurance for about 30 years. Now, started out in the military and have since moved into the civilian realm. I work for Symantec. I'm also an ISSA Distinguished Fellow, so that's the Information Security, System Security Association, international organization, and they have a recognition program where you have senior members, fellows, and distinguished fellows. Distinguished fellows, international recognition, limited to the top 1% in the organization. And today we're going to talk about the Internet Security Threat Report that Symantec puts out every year. We're on our 21st, I think it's 21st, yeah, it's our 21st volume. That's not 21 years, it's about 17. We started out doing it quarterly, and then we rapidly learned that we just couldn't keep up writing the report over and over and over again. So let's get started. 5 things that I want you to take with you at the end of the day. On average, 1 0 day every week in 2015. Over 500 million personal records taken last year. 3 out of every 4 websites put you at risk, and that's normal websites. That's not the bad fringes of the internet. That's everyday websites that you happen to visit. Encryption is now being used as a cyber weapon. It's plain out extortion. Now, it's not anything else but just extortion. They will get your money one way or another. And the cyber scammers will now make a call to you and ask you to hand over your cash to get your information back. That's how bad that it's gotten. And you're going to see a recurring theme throughout the report today, and I like to call it the professionalization of malware and cyber criminals and things like that. So hopefully you'll get something out of the end of this report. 2009, we saw 2.3 million unique pieces of malware during the year. And we thought that was a whole lot because we've been doing this for a long time. That was the largest number we had ever seen. But we knew that it wasn't going to get any better slowing down. We knew it was going to rapidly pick up. So we put some controls in place to take care of that at Symantec. And it's a darn good thing we did because last year there were 430 million unique pieces of malware that we saw in the wild last year. Or another way that you can look at that, 1.179 every day. And I think if you do the calculation, it's something like 47,000 unique pieces of malware every hour. If you start looking at it that way, it really makes you wonder how professionals can keep up. And next time you go to see your neighborhood Symantec rep, you'll pat them on the back because it's a terrible job. It's a tough job to do. All right. We're going to go through this, and if you have any questions, really feel free to stop me and ask questions. I've got about 275 slides, so it'll be about 3.5 hours. I was told I had 4, but we'll see where we go. I'm kidding. All right, 0 days. Symantec's got a long history doing what we do, and we're able to get information, and I kind of went back to 2006, and if you take a look at 0-day vulnerabilities, it was anywhere between 8 and I think 15 over the last few years, kind of, settled there. But then in 2013, we saw it almost double to 23. And we thought, wow, that's a lot, but is that just an anomalous year? Well, 2014 comes around and there were 24, so right about even. And we knew that we'd reached a new plateau in the amount of 0-day vulnerabilities that were coming out, and what we're seeing is that there's actually people out there now going out and looking for them. It used to be that you would stumble across one and then somebody would kind of publish it, people could take advantage of it, but now they're actually going out there and looking for them and leveraging them to exploit money or resources, whatever the case may be, out of users. And then in 2015 though, holy cow, went through the roof. 54 0-day vulnerabilities, and we just don't know in the next year what's going to happen after that. And you got to kind of wonder, how can it be that there were 54? There were less than almost half that the year before, And how could it be? Well, this is one way it can be. The hacking team. Anybody here of the hacking team? Okay, us Symantec people, right? They're an Italian group out there, and, well, they got hacked. They're a hacking group, and they got hacked. And we got about 400 to 600 gigabytes of data, and what we found was that they had 6 zero-day vulnerabilities in their tool chest just by themselves. So out of that 54, they had 6 of them. And these were new to them that they had developed or come across or purchased. And what were they doing with them but taking them, packaging them into their malware and selling it on the open market, using it themselves and then also reselling it to others to be able to use in the wild as well. So you can see if one team can have 6 packages, right, within their environment, it's not that hard to get to 54 or even more. Targeted attacks. So over the last few years, so a targeted attack is a spear-phishing campaign. And this is where somebody will go out there and specifically target your bank, right? Or an individual at that bank. And it's not a broad sweeping campaign where they just like spam everybody in the world and hope somebody catches. This is where they're really geared towards individuals or individual organizations. So over the last few years, we've noticed that the average number of email attacks per campaign has dropped dramatically. Went from 122 in 2012 down to 12 this year. Also, what we were seeing is that the number of recipients that were getting that campaign dropped about the same rate. You know, and you'd think this is good news, right? Hey, it's going down. That's fantastic. Well, it's really not. It's not that great a news. And what it's showing us is that these people are actually taking their time and targeting fewer and fewer people to come in underneath the radar. But the inverse of that is the actual campaigns themselves. 408 and up to 1,305 last year. So the number of actual campaigns is increasing, the number of people being targeted within that campaign is decreasing. That way they can come in under the radar and try and get what they want out of those individuals without, raising too many alarms. And in fact, that was a 55% increase over the year before. Another way to look at it, maybe, there we go, is this graph. And it talks about the differences between large enterprise and small organizations. You'll notice that large enterprise has been 50 to 35, pretty consistent, but you'll see that the small business is actually growing in the amount of times that they're targeted within the environment. If you're a large enterprise, 2,500 plus, you got a 1 in 2.5 odds of getting hit. In a small business, you're getting 1 in 40, right? There's a lot more small businesses, so you're not as likely to get hit. But the more curious thing that we kind of started keeping track this year is this right here. If you're a small business or if you're a large business, if you got hit once with a spear-phishing campaign, you're very likely to get hit again. So you can't go around sitting there and going, hey, we found it, we got rid of it, or we prevented it, because you're likely to turn around and they're going to come back and hit you again. Something just to be aware of, that you want to make sure that you just kind of keep on your toes. If you got hit once, watch for it again. And we're going to kind of talk a little bit about breaches here and total identities exposed. So 2011 to 2014, we saw these number of identities exposed. 2013 was what we called the year of the mega breach. If you go back and you look at our 2013 Internet Security Threat Report, we called it the year of the mega breach. And why was that? Because we had had such an increase in the amount of identities that were exposed in the wild. Well, this year we came along and we saw about 429 million identities exposed, or a 23% increase. But for the first time, what we're seeing is that not everybody is reporting the fact that they had identities exposed within their environment. Either they just don't care about the regulators that want them to self-identify, or they don't want their customers to know. Whatever the case is, we estimate that there was another 70 million identities exposed for a total of 500 million identities last year. And we can only estimate, but we're very good at it because we've been doing it for so long that there are statistics and other telltale signs that we leverage to actually see. So almost as many as in 2013. And then we kind of had the mega breaches, like we said. 2013 had 8 mega breaches, but then this year we actually surpassed that with 9. So fewer identities overall exposed, but more larger breaches that exposed 10 million or more identities. And how do these identities get exposed, right? Well, one way is through vulnerabilities in software or in websites. And Symantec goes out there and we've got a lot of telemetry that we get from the internet. We scan a lot of websites with some of our services. And so we went out there and we scanned a bunch of websites. And what we found is that over the last few years it's been fairly consistent that these websites have had 75, 78, % of them have vulnerabilities. And these, like I said earlier, these are not fringe bad websites. These are everyday common that you go to every single day. And they've got vulnerabilities which leave you at risk as well as the organization when you visit them. And then what we found was on top of that, about 15% still had critical vulnerabilities that hadn't been patched for days or even months. So it makes it a lot easier for somebody to get into these, target them, and get information out of them that they're not supposed to have, simply because they haven't patched their vulnerabilities. But who really cares? I'm not a website owner, so it's not my problem, right? Well, it really is. It's everybody's website. And there's a couple more guys that care. And it's these 7 guys right here. These are 7 Iranians that were just in 2015, were indicted in the state of New York for wreaking havoc and attacking banks within the United States and stealing information from the United States. So they're currently under indictment. They're still free and roaming about the countryside, but they are wanted by the FBI. And how did they do it? So I'm just going to read it for you. It's easier that way. They're accused of building a botnet, and these are systems that talk to each other, right? And they scan the internet for servers running an older version of a popular website content management software that had not been updated. Remember all those websites that didn't have updates? This is what they went out there and found and leveraged. And then this allowed them to install robot malware and then launch distributed denial of service attacks against these banks and other institutions in the United States. The good news, Symantec's known about it ever since early 2013, and we've got protection technology built into our products to prevent them from being exploited, our customers being exploited. The downside is, if you happen to be a customer of someone who doesn't have us, you could potentially be disrupted because of the fact that your other vendor didn't have, or your business didn't have it. Ransomware. This is something that everybody wants to talk about because you hear it in the news, it's everywhere, right? So ransomware actually took what we call an evolutionary path. And back in 2005 to 2009, it was a misleading app, right? Basically, it would say, hey, I see some issues. Thank you. All right, so in 2005 to 2009, it was a misleading app, and it was kind of, let us fix this for you. We found some issues. Pay us a little bit of money. We'll take care of it for you and fix it. Then it went into kind of a fake AV. Let us clean it for you. Pay us and we'll clean it up for you. You've got malware on your box, even though you don't, and we'll take care of it for you. Then we went into the first instance of ransomware, what we call ransomware. And this is somewhere you might have the FBI or the police come up a little notice saying, hey, we found illicit content on your machine or malware on your machine. If you don't let us clean it for you, we're going to take your, we're going to fine you some money, or pay us a little bit now so you don't have to pay as much later. And then it's finally morphed into crypto ransomware. And this is where they're actually taking your files and just charging you money. So I call it extortion, because that's exactly what it is. We've got what you want it back, you're going to pay us. And the rate's anywhere from $300 to $500 unless you're an organization, and then it's a whole lot more. Another way we can look at this is kind of how it's spread and how ransomware has kind of grown. But the one thing that kind of stands out here is that you notice that ransomware is not new. It's been around for many, many years, and in fact it was more prevalent early on, but then all of a sudden the misleading apps and fake AV came in and ransomware, because it was very difficult to deliver a payload. And the other thing was it was very difficult to get paid for. Misleading apps, fake AV, all took advantage of either like Western Union or something along those lines. But right in this area here, something came into the mix, and anybody want to know what that was? Oh yes.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, Bitcoin, digital online payments, right? Made it a lot easier. If you kind of think about it as misleading apps is like somebody taking your kid ransom or even holding hostage, right? And you always see the movies, the guy takes the money, drops it in the trash can, everybody walks off and they're waiting in the wings, and then here comes the poor sap to get the money out of the trash can, right? And what happens? 25 cops all show up and arrest him. Well, it's very similar back in the old days, because once you realized that you were being tricked, you could sit there and cancel payment or just stop, and then you were good to go. Well, along comes online digital payment, and specifically Bitcoin, and it's very difficult to trace. So it's no more that guy going to the trash can and pulling the money bag out of the trash can and getting caught. It's very difficult to find them and identify them. It's anonymous. So that's why we've really seen a huge increase in the amount of ransomware taking advantage of digital online payments. And in fact, there's been an increase over the last 2 years, 35%, and there's about 1,000 a day. That's businesses and individuals last year. About 1,000 people a day were getting taken advantage of. This is kind of an interesting chart right here. I really like it because what it does is it shows ransomware families. These are not individual variants, because there could be thousands, 100,000, million different variants. But what you kind of see is the actual root families for ransomware. And they don't all equate to an individual gang or a professional group or a nation state, but it's pretty darn close. All the way back from 2005, and then online payment came in, and you saw that it's just ballooned over the last year, year and a half. Some new things that we saw in 2015, the first Android ransomware, SimpLocker, came out. The other thing that came out was Unix Ransom Crypt. This is the first time we saw that website files were encrypted. Think about that. If you're running a business and your website files get encrypted, what happens? You can no longer use that website either to make money or to get new customers, things like that. So you either have to recover from a backup and then restore, or you have to pay the ransom. So they figured out, if I encrypt your website files, I can get more money out of you. Mac, not even exempt from this. KeyRanger this year we saw for Mac OS X. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention smartwatches, smart televisions, other things like that. What we don't know is how many people, and we'll see a show of hands, how many people would pay $300 to watch Game of Thrones that night, right? Well, I might. It's an interesting concept. We ran the malware on these systems, and we were able to execute and lock up smartwatches and televisions and things like that. So we'll just have to wait and see if there's enough money in that to actually be viable for the bad guys. But the thing is, it's like I said earlier, $300 to $500 a pop. Unless you're an organization, there was a hospital in California, $17,000. You can get a lot. It takes a lot of people to make $17,000 at $300 to $500 a whack. So they're starting to target more and more businesses. I was actually talking to a friend of mine today, and he said he's got a buddy who's got a small business, doesn't make very much money, had like $35,000 in his account. They ransomed all his files for his organization, $15,000, took half of his money in order to get his business back, or he would have been dead in the water. And I was like, well, he should have had a backup, but that's a whole nother story. Let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about consumers. You know, consumers are not exempt. We all know that. Grandma, grandpa out there, other folks that are being taken advantage of. And we'll do a little example here. So I drive an Audi. It's not in kilometers or anything like that, or Celsius, but I didn't pick this picture. I think one of our Canadian buddies did. And let's say I'm out driving around, or you're out in your car and you're driving around, and all of a sudden you have a problem with your car. And so what are you thinking? Oh, I got to get it to my mechanic, right? Because you've got a trusted mechanic. You don't want to take it to just anybody. But let's say that you're driving along and all of a sudden you're having a problem with your car and your phone rings. And it's, hey, this is Bob. I noticed you had a problem with your car. I want you to bring it into my shop and I can help fix it for you. Of course, I'm going to have to charge you. We probably wouldn't think about doing it, right? But what if we were driving along and all of a sudden on the manufacturer dash a notice came up that said, you've got issues and call us and we can help talk you through it and we can get you into a shop and you can pay them to repair your vehicle. I might do it, you know, because it's my car telling me to do this. We haven't seen this yet in automobiles. Oh, it's coming. It really is. But what we are seeing is on computers. So it used to be that they would call you up and they would just kind of randomly call people and say, hey, you've got an issue. And then you might be dumb enough to go, okay, yeah, help me, Microsoft, you know. And then you'd have to pay them money and they would help you do some bogus thing. Well, now they're actually throwing an error up on the message on your screen and saying, hey, you've got a problem. You're a little more likely to believe that and be influenced by that and taken advantage of. We are seeing that today. And it's not new, right? We've seen it ever since 2010, but this was those phone support scams. Cold calling. Hey, notice you're having a problem with your computer. That's funny, I'm not even on my computer, I'm at the beach. Or something like that, and then they'd hang up and call the next one, and then one out of every 10,000 they'd grab somebody and make a little bit of money. So it's nothing new, it's just kind of morphed and evolved and gotten a little bit more difficult to tell when the bad people are coming after you. And in fact, this year you saw there was a significant increase, and we actually saw 16 million of these little scams go after customers out there. And it's interesting because this is not malware. This is simply a message frame coming up on your machine. No software installed. It's you visited the wrong website or hit something wrong and they flash up a screen with no malware behind it. Boy, it sure would be nice if there was a company out there that could help protect you against that. Well, as a matter of fact, we did. So we saw 100 million of those in 2015 and we blocked every one of them on our customers. So again, pat your friendly neighborhood security guy on the back. So just in summary, ransomware evolution, they're getting more and more targeted. They're even infecting backups and destroying them, right? That used to be the thing. If I got hit with CryptoLocker, as long as I had a backup, destroy the file system, restore from a backup. Take me some time, but it wouldn't cost me any money. Now they're actually going in early, infecting systems, you back it up, it's no good to you then. And then it's just extortion. Online payments have made it very easy to steal from you. So kind of coming into the wrap up here, this is kind of our last segment. And I've talked a little bit earlier about the professionalization of malware and cybercrime. And I think there's some facts that are going to kind of play that out for you, so let's kind of go through them. Remember, we saw those 54, a big, huge leap this year, large leaps for the 2 prior years, so what's it going to do moving forward? The top 5 most frequently exploited zero-day vulnerabilities. Well, number 1, what do you see? Top 4 were Adobe. That's a whole nother story. We could spend all afternoon talking about that. But we're going to kind of talk about this one here at the bottom. This one right here, Adobe CVE 2015-3113. So in June, late June, Adobe released an out-of-band patch for a vulnerability, and they announced that same day that that vulnerability existed. okay? Within a week, 5 of the most well-known exploit kits had integrated that vulnerability into their platform. And when we see that within a week, that's development to add this brand new exploit into their toys to use against consumers and businesses. We don't move that fast as software developers. We wish we could, but that just shows you these guys have to be professional enough and resourced and in tune enough to be able to develop these quickly. And a card for anybody that knows the #1 most exploited kit in 2015.
Angler.
Angler, absolutely. I'll get you a card. Okay, and then more professionalization realization here. We'll talk about the Butterfly gang. This is a gang that went in and looked for information within organizations in order to manipulate the stock market. And so what they did is they had a set of tools in their back pocket. Banner jack, multi-purpose, event log, and you can kind of see what those things did. You know, that's something that even a professional network or security engineer might leverage similar tools to help protect their environment. They're using them against us within the environment in order to gain access to information. And one thing that we saw in multi-purpose, this really shocked us, was the documentation. These people developed this tool and documented it in order for the most number of people to be able to leverage their tool, buy it from me, and use it to attack other people. And there's no slang in here, there's no misspelling, punctuation's where it should be, formatting's the way it should be. This is a level of sophistication that we've seen in the past, but now we're seeing it everywhere. And that's why I think we're seeing a level of professionalization that we haven't in the past. So how does the Butterfly gang do a command and control operation? Well, like I said, they'll take advantage of those vulnerabilities that we saw. They'll go into an environment and they'll lay in wait, and then they'll figure out what information they need and they'll extract it to a command and control server. This is just a server in the outside that's talking inside and saying, give me what you got. Pretty common stuff these days. But what they did was they didn't stop there. They copied it to another command and control server. So they leapfrogged it from one place to another, and then they did it again. Leapfrogged it to a third server. And so what does that do? It makes it very difficult for someone within like FBI or Interpol or whomever to kind of keep track of where this information is going after it's been exfiltrated out of the environment. They didn't stop there. These guys are good. They ran these command and control servers from virtual operating systems. So what they do, when they were done, they turned it off. Well, if you turn it off, I'm dead in the water. I can't go any further. So I can't follow where you're going. It makes it more difficult. And then they encrypted those operating systems on that command and control server. So even if you did get to it, unless you had the decryption mechanism, you couldn't see the information that was contained in there as well. And then they also went further and wiped out server logs, you know, covering up their tracks. This sounds like something a spy might do, right? You know, I'm going to cover my tracks. You wouldn't even know I'm here. And I think it's all the hogs that come into my yard do the same thing. They kind of, well, they don't wipe their tracks. You know they've been there. They tear up my yard. But these guys are very stealthy, you know, very quiet, don't want to get caught. So levels of sophistication we haven't seen in the past. You know, and then the tech support scams are still out there. We see them to this day. And they're in outbound call centers, so they're still doing the cold calling, as well as, you know, you call me, I'll call you, things like that. But, you know, what does this take? It takes, you know, employees. It takes power. It takes systems. It takes phone lines. You know, people get sick. You know, you got to call somebody else in to take over for them because we got a job to do, right? We're scamming people out of their money. So they're still doing these things, levels of sophistication. And then there's something called Tesla Crypt, if you've ever heard of it. This was a really interesting situation because they didn't wait for the security community to give it a name. They named it themselves. We are TeslaCrypt, and we are ransomware, and we will take your money, right? All your files are encrypted. Purchase private key with Bitcoin. Push a button, make it very easy to get your money, so you can pay them your money and you can get your files back. If you have a problem, call tech support. It wasn't calls, right? But it was text message tech support. So you can go, Grandma goes, I don't know what a Bitcoin is. Well, let me tell you what a Bitcoin is, and let me tell you how to get one, and let me tell you how to pay me. And then I'll give you your files back. Almost like they're, sure, we'll be glad to help you, pay us the money. Very interesting. And then last one, the Dridex gang. This is a group that use spam runs to go out and try and get into people's environments, individuals, and get bank account information and steal money out of their bank accounts. And they would do a run anywhere from 2 to 8 spam runs every day, and that's thousands and thousands of emails that go out during a spam run, right? Well, it's every day, right? Well, no, you can tell by the chart it's not every day. So can anybody tell me what all these are? Weekends. Those were weekends. We saw a drop to 0 activity out of this gang on the weekends. What about right here? You can see the date. 21 December, 4 January. What is that? Christmas break, right? So they didn't work weekends, and they didn't work over Christmas. Level of professionalization, right? We wish we could get that good a schedule half the time. So when cyber criminals, they work in call centers, they write great documentation, and they take the weekends and holidays off, you know it's a profession. And that's kind of the key theme that we saw out of the Internet Security Threat Report last year, was this level of professionalization is just continuing to climb among cyber criminals. And that's all I've got. Any questions?